Hello, this is Margaret Donor and my co-host,
Shelley Tatelbaum.
and we're so delighted to be here again today to offer our program called The Healing Hour. And we're both in our own way healers. I am the co-owner of Partners in Massage in Hyde Park, located in Hyde Park. And we do physical and in our own way. I think we also do emotional healing.
Absolutely, you do.
And we're located right on Route 9 near the Vanderbilt Mansion. Our phone number, if you're interested in getting a massage or other body work or more information about Partners in Massage, you can call 229-9133. And then I just wanted Shelley to introduce herself and talk just for a moment about her Center for Grief and Loss.
Right, so before we get started into our topic, I'm the director and founder of the Center for Grief, Loss, and Life Transitions. I'm a grief therapist in the area for over 23 years, and we deal with all kinds of loss, and the phone number there is 471-5269, and we're located across the street from Vassar College. I'd also like to thank the sponsors of this program who believe in what Margaret and I are doing. And one is William G. Miller and Son Funeral Home, and that's operated at 371 Hooker Avenue in Poughkeepsie. And it's a family-owned business, and Miller Funeral Home has actually brought 3 generations of personal service to every funeral arrangement. The Miller family is a family like yours, and they experience grief just like you. They take their responsibility very seriously, and they share that commitment with no other family or funeral home. Vinnie Miller, actually, who's a personal friend of mine, he oversees all the arrangements, and he continues the Miller family tradition that was actually started by his grandfather in 1932. So you can rest assured that you'll have the Miller Funeral Home commitment before, during, and after the funeral. That's the Miller Family Guarantee, and for any questions, you can call them at 485-0241. That's 485-0241. Or you can visit their webpage at www.williamwmgmillerfuneralhome.com. And also the New York State Solar Farm. They're making solar affordable for every homeowner, and that you save from day one with their new solar energy lease program. And that's so important now, the solar energy, with no money out of your pocket and savings from day one. You can actually request a free iQuote today from them and get it tomorrow by calling their professionals at 877-SOLAR, SOLAR 95. You can lease your solar, and you can love their energy, your energy bill. And also Basic Glass Corporation, and they're actually a commercial architectural glass company that supplies and installs all of your commercial needs, from aluminum storefronts, aluminum doors, and skylights. And you can call them for more information. Actually, you can visit them at their .com, which is www.basecglass.com. So those are our sponsors.
We want to thank them for sponsoring the Healing Hour with Margaret Donor and Shelley Tatelbaum. Yeah.
So here we go, Margaret. We've got this whole country focused not only on the Olympics now, but on the absolute tragedy that took place in the movie theater in Aurora, Colorado. And of course, it ignites the horrific and traumatic grief of those who are coming back from Afghanistan and for 9/11. And the question always comes to me is, how do we heal such mass grief that is so horrific and so traumatic? How do we do that?
I find that is a very interesting question, because it seems that events like this become far more than just personal ones for the families involved. They become national events, and even to some degree, I suppose you could even say global events. But they ignite certainly the uncertainty and the fear that humans carry around in them. That, you know, this idea of going into a movie theater to see a movie, which most of us don't think twice about it, and the realization of something so horrible happening to the people who were in that theater. And as a grief therapist, I was very curious if you could kind of explain to us perhaps how that type of traumatic loss differs, or how it affects us differently than the slow passing of a loved one? How do we process it? Is it different?
Well, it's completely different because it's an unexpected death. When some loved one is dying of cancer or some other chronic illness, serious illness, we have a time to prepare. So that time affords us some kind of an assimilation of what that loss is going to be for us. But when we enter into a movie theater with the preconceived notion that we're going in to have fun and be entertained and it's going to be a great night, and for some people it was their birthday, and then you go in and the movie starts and all of a sudden a gunman starts shooting, there's that moment of what's happening? Is this really real? Is it part of the movie? Is this a joke? And then you realize, oh my God, this is real. I'm going to die. I could die. And then there's that panic and going into that fight or flight mode.
And it has to hit all of us, I would think, or most of us, I can't ever say all of us, but it has to hit many of us at a very deep spiritual place, because how we react to these kinds of events, whether or not we feel anger, we're able to feel any forgiveness, whether or not we feel the sense that perhaps even God wasn't looking out for us. I mean, all these different kinds of emotions swirl inside of us, and it really puts our backs to the wall, in a sense, I guess is a way to put it, in so many different areas.
Well, what happens is you're igniting fear. And, we lose the illusion of being safe.
Right.
And so that then puts us into this mode of how can we trust the world and have faith in the world if we can't even go to a movie, and feel free to do that. And by the way, in case anybody is interested in calling here, our phone number at the station is 471-9500. So if you'd like to join our discussion today, please feel free to do so. It's 471-9500. But we're talking about fear, and this is real fear. In terms of walking, when it's happening, that's real fear. The problem is that now we hold fear in our body, and the next time we go to the movies, now we're fearful because we have in our mind, if that happened to them, then it could happen to me. I've lost my invincibility.
Right. And I find it, I have to bring this up, and I apologize if it feels like it's maybe a little off point, but what comes to me, and I bet what comes to a lot of people's minds, is that one of the, I don't think it should be a luxury, but in our world sometimes it seems that it's a luxury. The luxury that Americans have is a feeling, or almost a guaranteed right, of safety in these events, yet in so many other places in the world, that guaranteed right of safety has been taken from the individuals, from the citizens. And I suspect that for America, it's Americans in general, there is a different impact for these events too, because as you say, you think, oh, I'm going to a movie theater, I'm guaranteed to be safe. There's a certain feeling of guarantee to be safe in a movie theater, and then to have such an event. And yet, of course, in other countries where people have experienced daily bombings or terrorism and so forth, they don't have that guarantee anymore. It's been taken from them. And taking that guarantee from people is also a part, I think, of the fear and the loss and what we suffer from collectively as Americans in our emotions. Would you agree? Do you sort of see what I'm saying with that?
No, I completely agree with you, because since 9/11, we now realize that we are vulnerable. And so this sense of, and actually it's been an illusion of safety here, has completely been crushed. And you're right, other countries have experienced this, but in our own arrogance, we've always felt that we were untouchable. And
Right.
that is a secondary loss that we all feel now. Even going on a subway in New York City, you're looking around you, you're looking for bags under seats. You're, in airports, we're hyper vigilant now. We've lost that grace and ease of safety and security that we experienced before 9/11. And so that then brings up other places in our human where we have not felt safe before. People who were perhaps abused or had been, had some kind of a trauma in their lives, then that gets triggered. So we're not just talking about going to a movie theater. Now we're talking about people who might have suffered sexual abuse as a kid and didn't feel safe, and then had this feeling of safety and now don't feel safe again because the world isn't there to protect them.
So what you find in your work is that people who have come into you with different issues of grief and loss and so forth are now, you're saying, almost being re-triggered by this outside event. It's bringing up their own personal issues.
Without a doubt. Just this week in my office, I've had parents who've had children die from other kinds of things happening to them, and now their hearts are ripped open because they're feeling the grief of other parents who have had their children die in this horrible, murderous, tragic shooting. And so their child might have died in a car accident, and had that unexpected grief of their child was there one moment and gone the next. And although it's not the same thing, it brings up the same feelings.
So the question is then, of course, what brings us to the question is, how do we heal this, or can we heal it? Is it possible to heal it, or what tools do we have individually or collectively to work with to meet the challenge of this kind of grief?
We can heal everything. Healing is a choice. Okay? Some people hold on and feel that they have to hold on and they have no other choice to hold on to all of the pain and tragedy. It's not something we ever get over, but we certainly work our way through it. How do we do that? Well, we have to go through those 4 tasks of mourning that we talked about in our very first show, which is, the first one is to accept the reality that happened, because right now everybody's in a state of numbness and shock, and that lasts for about 6 to 12 weeks, where everything is surreal. Is this a nightmare? And I'm going to wake up and it's going to be okay. And then we realize, no, this isn't a nightmare. This is real. And once we realize that, we lose the protection of the numbness and shock, and then we feel the pain, the full impact of the pain of our loss. And that's where we get angry and depressed and outraged, and the whole full range of emotions become magnified. And as a grief therapist, it's my job to give tools to help people work this out. So some people who might feel guilty, is your guilt real or not? Your sadness, how to be able to allow that without feeling like you're going to drown from being with it, and learning how to lean into pain instead of run away from pain, which is what our society likes to do. We like to drink and drug and shop and do all sorts of things to distract us from our pain.
Right.
So giving people tools for that. And then the third one is how to adjust to the world now in this environment without the people who have died, and perhaps as a global thing in terms of our environment becoming less secure. And how do we move through that adjustment? And then the fourth task is, our beliefs are shattered. Like you said before, where was God in this? And why did this happen to me? And I thought as a parent, I'd be the one who would die first. And, how does a 4-year-old die in a movie theater? And trying to work through those questions, excuse me, in terms of, once our beliefs have been shattered, what new belief systems can we put in there to help us feel more safe, because the rug has been pulled out from under our feet. We don't know where we're going to land, and we're petrified. And how do we deal with living with fear in a way that fear doesn't live our lives for us? So it's really building an awareness of the fear we have and being able to reality test that out. And then it's the learning how to live with thing. It's not an acceptance. It's unacceptable that a 4-year-old or anybody dies in a movie theater, going to have fun, or it's your birthday. That's something that we may find unacceptable, but we do have to learn how to live with it. And we do have to accept the fact that it happened. And so it's really a journey. It's an event in terms of an event that happened, but grief is not an event. Grief is a journey.
And, I realize as I hear you talk, I think about each of us in an individual way. And we're obviously have all our different coping mechanisms. And some people, they harden. That's their way to deal with pain and grief and difficulty. They harden up, and they make themselves tough, and they make themselves tough with physically, with their bodies. They make themselves tough emotionally. They close down. They decide, I don't want to feel anymore, or I'm never going to let anything get to me anymore. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's a very understandable response to the amount of difficulty that many people have endured or that they see in the world around them. And others seem to have that kind of resource. They don't have the ability to just tighten and toughen and I'm not going to let it get to me kind of thing. Maybe you might think of that warrior, they don't have that. And they tend to just crumble. They feel disempowered, or they don't feel that they can endure it or meet the challenge. And so the personality, each of us are so different in how we meet these experiences. So, certainly I would think that treating a client would depend in some part also as to what their coping mechanisms are, what their personality is. It would be so individual.
You hit the nail on the head. We have different ways of grieving. We grieve according to our personality. We grieve according to the kind of death it is. We grieve masculinely or femininely. And I say that not male or female because some women grieve in a masculine way and some men grieve in a feminine way. So the difference there would be that women, in terms of the feminine type of grieving, deal with it with kind of closed up, huddled over, crying and rocking. And that's how they deal. It's kind of an internal experience. And the masculine grief is they go out and chop wood and keep working and keep going. And so you can see they're very different modalities of grieving. And so the feminine is looking for the masculine to hold them, and the masculine is trying to fix everything, and they can't. And so then they feel powerless. And so then that's where couples, for example, who've had a child die get into challenges because their grieving patterns are so different. And we grieve according to our culture. We grieve according to our age, our religion. So there are so many different factors involved in grieving. So as a therapist, I need to be listening to where they're coming from to be able to assess what their personality is and be able to guide them through this in a way that's very personal.
And I also, was thinking about how it even affects the generations, and that an entire generation grows up with experiences. So a generation that's grown up with a 9/11, or a generation that's grown up with a lot of these terrorist events, they're going to have a generational consciousness almost based, whereas a generation that grew up earlier when this was perhaps, I don't know, it wasn't as happening maybe as often, or at least it wasn't as reported or in our news, and we didn't feel it all around us. They're going to have a whole different level of feeling of safety or coping mechanism. So it would be interesting to see how generationally, a group grows up with these experiences and how it impacts, because we all also worry about the numbness factor, that if too many, in countries that are torn by war, in constant experiences of grief or this kind of thing, when do people tend to go numb? When do they finally, they've had enough and their only coping mechanism is to shut down? Because the human mind, the human body, in my belief system, there is a limitation to what we can endure, and at some point we just hit the wall and we shut down.
Well, we become desensitized to the event. That right. Numbing is we desensitize to it because we don't want to become sensitive to it, because then it puts us at risk. So we'd rather detach by desensitizing. And I believe that we first became aware of all of this in terms of the Vietnam War and the World War II veterans that came back, and then the Vietnam War veterans that came back, where then we started to have the understanding of post-traumatic stress disorder. And so I think we need to put a little attention on post-traumatic stress disorder, because many of the people in Aurora and 9/11 are experiencing post-traumatic stress, where they are in this event. It's so horrific that their whole psyche kind of shuts down in fear, but then in their dream world, they relive the event over and over and over again in their minds and their dreams. And it's a real disorder. And as a grief therapist, what we do under those circumstances is to have them come in and keep talking about it. Mm-hmm. Because the more you keep talking about it and verbalizing it and externalizing it instead of internalizing it, that's the way you desensitize yourself, so that you can really get close to it and you're able to talk about it over and over and over again. So the desensitizing is actually paradoxical.
So what you're basically saying is that the events have to be processed, and if we don't process it consciously, externalizing it, mm-hmm. you're going to process it unconsciously.
That's correct.
And so you can't run away from it.
No.
And I was just thinking, when you were talking, and I had mentioned generational, and you talked about the Vietnam War, I was in high school during the Vietnam War, and I remember, I think it was the first war they said that was broadcast on television, to the extent that
That's
it was.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching on the TV the horrific things that they used to show, and the My Lai massacre. Mm-hmm. And I, at the age of 16, watching that, because I hadn't learned how to cope at all. Now I'm an old lady. I've gone through enough of this that I have a few more skills. I would say just a few maybe, but at 16 I was wide open.
Right. And
so I remember wanting to die. I remember clearly saying in my teens, I don't want to live in a world like this, that mm-hmm. this is how we live and this is what we do to each other. It's not a world I want to live in. Mm-hmm. And so that was something that was a part of my experience as a teenager that has definitely formed me, was the broadcast of Vietnam on the television and in every magazine and newspaper. And of course, all my friends and high school were being drafted and all that kind of thing. But I think it makes me wonder how this is a different thing than I grew up with, and how the teenagers who don't have the coping mechanisms, I wonder what they're doing and how they're dealing with these events. Because I did, when I was a teenager, regardless of Vietnam, it was still overseas, and I still felt safe to go to a movie theater. And I wonder how the teenagers, have you seen an impact on the young people, and how it's affecting them generationally to have these kinds of terrorist, quote-unquote terrorist events in our own country?
Well, they're more used to it than you were, because mm-hmm. they've grown up, a lot of the teenagers now, with 9/11. And now think about all the tweeting and all of the ways in which things are happening faster. So, it's all over the place. It's all, when something happens, seconds later, we're finding out about it. In the Vietnam War, it wasn't, that same kind of mass media coverage. And not only that, we have so many TV stations. We've got CNN going all the time, and we've got constant news on your iPhones. And so we're being battered almost with the constant, influx of all of this horrific information. And what I'm seeing happen is, and also with these video games that these kids are playing with, in terms of killing people and all of that, that we as a society have become actually more desensitized to war and the horrors of it and the horrors of these kinds of things because we're seeing so much of it. Whereas when you and I were teenagers, this was a new thing. So it really hit us hard. You know, we had never seen anything like this before, like you were saying. This was the first time. So it had much more of an impact on us than it does now to the teenagers today. They are much more desensitized to it than we were.
But they must be carrying it, like you said, if they're not processing it externally, they're processing it internally, correct? So it doesn't go away. It isn't, it's just being hidden perhaps inside of them, or how, you know what I'm saying? Because they must be having some kind of post-traumatic stress from these events then, if it's not as intense as it is in many other countries where, you know, terrorism, but still they must somehow, I don't know, their dreams or however they're processing it must be different than other generations of Americans.
Well, it is different than other generations, but where you're going in the direction is that they become more terrorized, and I believe that they have now learned to be more hypervigilant because of 9/11, and especially here on the East Coast, in particular New Yorkers, they're very used to being hypervigilant all the time, and it almost has become a part of life for them. So it's not that traumatic. I believe where it gets traumatic is for those who have, like I'm dealing with some of the children from 9/11 who are now teenagers, and this is hitting them because it's more personal. It's not universal. Mm-hmm. Right now we're watching these people on the news. If you have not had any kind of horrific or traumatic death in your life, it's still the other. It's not you. You still have a certain protection that this is not happening to me, this is happening to the other. If you're a teenager, a child from 9/11, it has personally happened to you, so now it is igniting your grief. So those are the kids that are the most at risk. Okay. Does that make any sense to you?
It does. We're going to take a little pause right here and take a break and play a little music, and we will be back.
But call us. We're at 471-9500. We'd love to have your input.
Thank you, and we will be back with the Healing Hour in a moment.
I've got to see you somehow, not tomorrow, right now. I know it's late, but whoa, I can't wait. So come on and steal away. Please steal away. Now don't start thinking, trying to make up your mind. Your folk are sleeping. Let's not waste any time. I know it's late. Whoa, I can't wait. So come on and steal away. Please steal away. I know it's wrong asking this of you. There's no other way I can be with you. If only your folk would approve. Things like this we wouldn't have to do. No, I won't tell anybody else. I'll keep it to myself. I know it's late. Well, I can't wait. So come on and steal away. Please steal away. Because I need you, yes I do. Oh, by my side, yes. Oh, honey, I need you.
And we're back with the Healing Hour with Shelley Tatelbaum and Margaret Donor. I am the co-owner, Margaret Donor, the co-owner of Partners in Massage, located in Hyde Park, New York. And we are available online at www.partnersinmassage.com. You can find out about all the different healing modalities that we have for bringing mind, body, and spirit back into alignment. You can also call us at 229-9133. We're located on Route 9 in Hyde Park, and we're just south of the Vanderbilt Mansion. And my co-host here is Shelley Tatelbaum, and she'll tell you a little bit about herself.
Well, I'm a grief therapist and the founder and director of the Center for Grief, Loss, and Life Transition in Poughkeepsie, New York. For more information, you could either call the center at 471-5269. We're located across the street from Vassar College in Poughkeepsie. Or you can actually go to my website, which is www.shelleytatelbaum.com. And that's Shelley, SHELLEYTATELBAUM.com. And all sorts of information is there for you to look up. And I also have a blog there. I just want to shout out once again to the New York State Solar Farm, making solar affordable for every homeowner. And their phone number is 877-SOLAR-95, as well as the Basic Glass Corporation, a commercial architectural company that supplies and installs commercial needs for storefronts, aluminum doors, and skylights. And they're at www.basicglass.com. And last but not least is William G. Miller and Son Funeral Home, which is located at 371 Hooker Avenue in Poughkeepsie. And their phone number is 485-0241, 485-0241. They are amazing, is all I can say. I've been dealing with Vinnie Miller for the last 24 years, and at a very traumatizing time in your life and vulnerable time in your life, he is right there for you. It's a family business. So we're getting back now to talking about healing traumatic and horrific grief. And I just wanted to get back to the point of view of how do we heal this kind of grief? How do we heal this kind of fear? How do we heal this? And part of it is that when an event happens, it's real at the time it's happening, and there's the pain that's involved in that, and that pain is unavoidable. What is avoidable is creating more suffering about the pain and the horror. And so that requires an awareness of the stories that you're telling about it. And so the more and more we talk about how horrible it is and how terrible this is, we keep reigniting in our own bodies the feeling of fear. We're doing it to ourselves. It's bad enough the event happened, but then we watch it all the time on the news. We're talking about it all the time, and now we're putting those fearful energies in our bodies by the talking about it. And so one of the pieces of wisdom I'd like to pass along is let's stop talking about the fear and let's just go into how can I help myself out in terms of learning how to breathe through the fear, helping my body out because my emotional body is terrorized. What can I do physically? And I think, Margaret, this is where you can make an impact in terms of the body work and the work that you do at Partners in Massage, because emotional pain, what it is it's energy in motion. That's emotion. It's energy in motion in our bodies. Right. And it needs to find expression. Right. And you find it in expression by talking about it with a grief therapist, not to your friends, but talking about it with a professional in terms of desensitizing you to that pain so that you can cope and deal with it. But then it also has an energy in your body that must be released through other modalities. And I'd love for you to be able to put, your wisdom to that question.
Well, One of the things that happens to all of us is that we armor ourselves physically. So we'd been talking about how we armor ourselves emotionally, mentally, at times when we experiencing life and the stresses of life. And in a case of any traumatic experiences, it becomes, tenfold. And the body holds it all. And we are all learning that when we deal with stress, we deal with it physically, we weaken our immune system, and dis-ease becomes, is hosted, in a sense, can be hosted in the physical body. And so many times people don't take into account the toll on the physical body, and they don't take care of their physical body. And in dealing with grief, in dealing with stress, all the emotional challenges of our lives, we can't just ignore the toll on the physical body. And if we want to be mind, body, spirit healthy, we have to honor the physical body, and we have to take care of it. Shelley likes to say, it's taking care of her human.
That's right.
I take good care of my human, and Shelley does take good care of her human, because she understands that if you don't, then all of that emotion is going to lodge itself in the body and create a lot of dis-ease.
And more suffering.
And more suffering, because from simple things like chronic headaches, tension in the neck, shoulders, low back pain, and all the aches and pains that we have. What is so amazing about getting body work, and there's so many different kinds that are available to people now, and one of the things that is so wonderful about now versus, 30 years ago or 40 years ago is that these modalities are everywhere, right? The help is everywhere. So it's not hard to find. It's around the corner. And whether it is that you do yoga or qigong, and you prefer that, you get a massage, which is, those of us that get regular massage say we can't believe that people live without it on some level.
Well, just to put an ad in as a grief therapist, and the intense work that I do, because it goes into my body as well, is I don't believe that I could be as effective as I am without having body work done on me to be able to release the tension or the holding or anything that's happening in my body. And it's so preventive. And the burnout rate for grief therapists is 7 years, and I'm in it for 24. Just about 24
because
years.
You take good care of your human.
That's right. You take very good care of my human, but I have to have the awareness to take myself to get to that place.
Right. Yeah, because you do. You take good care of your human. And I think that when people are going through these kinds of experiences, and the clenching of the jaw, the headaches, and the pain and the tension makes it impossible at times to process the grief and the emotion clearly. It gets in the way of it. You feel like, you feel like hell. And when you feel like hell, it's really hard to be clear. It's kind of like our minds aren't functioning clearly. And so it's so important to understand that in the healing processes, don't ignore your physical body. Realize that your physical body is taking so much of the brunt of what you're doing every day, whether it's your feet, your legs, your head. And it's really essential to treat your physical body as if it is important, that you love it and that you care for it and that you appreciate all it does. And you give yourself that time to have quiet time during the day, right? To turn off the TV and the radio and the cell phone, and be quiet and do a meditation technique, even if it's just breathing and being still for even 15 minutes. It doesn't even take long.
No, and I want to just add that grief is somatic. What I mean by that is grief does go into the body because it's the energy. So people will have headaches, chest pains. Somebody who's died of a heart attack, their spouse might have the symptoms of chest pains because it takes hold in their body as well. Breathing difficulties, lower back pain, stomach problems. Grief is somatic, and like you were starting to say, that when your mind is in hell, when your body is in hell, that the mind can't do what it needs to do as well. So we have to take care of our mind, body, and spirit. And so you're absolutely right. And I'd love for you to talk more about, meditating and having that quiet time, and especially during body work, to be able to be doing breath work at the same time. And if you can kind of put your attention on that to help people become aware of how helpful that is. Right.
Well, one of the things you mentioned is that people do a lot of drinking of alcohol, and they do a lot of shopping, right? And all these things to take away pain, emotional pain. And the money that they're spending in these detrimental, endeavors, they could be spending to their help themselves to really bring themselves into greater health and alignment. And so there's always this feeling people have that they don't deserve to spend money on their body to heal. They don't deserve to spend the money on a massage or reflexology or acupuncture, and even to join a gym. Sometimes people will say, I'm not going to spend the money to do that. And yet they'll turn right around and, spend $60 on something that really isn't going to help them. And so a lot of this is just reprogramming our intention toward ourselves and realizing that we have to put the effort and the time and the money toward our own well-being and health, and realizing that whatever it is that works for you to bring you to a less stressful place. And I obviously, as a co-owner of Partners in Massage, I've been, over 20 years in this business, and I get massage all the time, regularly myself, and different body work. And I've witnessed it in clients over the years who come in, and it helps them to enjoy life on every level, mentally, emotionally, physically. And it helps them to feel the joy again, the joy of being alive. And that's something that does leave us when we are in constant stress and emotional upheaval. But lying on a massage table or getting your reflexology or acupuncture, and there's so many ways, as I said, so many modalities, we call them, available. Even sitting quietly and making a little space for yourself with quiet music. Those things that you do for yourself will bring the joy back in your life, and it won't always feel that from morning to night that it's a struggle to get through, but that you really are enjoying your life more. So everything that Shelley and I talk about is really to try and help people have a better quality of life. Wouldn't you say, Shelley?
Absolutely. And the other point to that is not only does it bring joy back into your life, but it provides the release for you to be able to invite those energies in. You make room now for more calming energies to come in, and you give your body some respite from the pain for that hour that you're there, or however long that you're there. You're taking care of yourself, giving your body the chance to heal by just loving yourself and understanding that we have to have a balance in our lives. It's not that I'm a very religious person, but I do love this quote from Ecclesiastes, and the reason I know it was because it was a song by the Byrds way back in the 60s, turn, turn, turn. And there's a time to be born and a time to die. There's a time to laugh and there's a time to cry. There's a time for everything. So you don't need to feel guilty to have respite from the pain or feel the joy of life in your body again, because around the corner is going to be the pain again. So we need to have that balance and create that balance in our lives.
We have to really honor, the times that we give ourselves pleasure and not superficial pleasure, but
and you're allowed to
pleasure.
have pleasure when you're in pain.
Yeah.
I think some people have this mistaken notion that I have to suffer. I'm not allowed to have any relief from this. I'm not allowed to have somebody make me feel good and work on me because I'm grieving and I'm being disloyal to my loved one if I feel pleasure and I don't think about them for an hour. And that is a complete lie.
Right.
And people really need to know that, that it is in the remembering of them and the connection with them that creates that actually connection in terms of the remembering the good times as well. It's not about connecting to the suffering to feel that's the only way you can connect.
I wanted to just spend a moment in what you mentioned, but I want to talk about the caregivers, because the caregivers, if somebody is a real caregiver to someone else who's in pain or dying or counseling others, as you do and I do, and you're a caregiver. Mm-hmm. And the caregivers need to care for themselves, and they need to give to themselves. And oftentimes we get into a habit of being a caregiver and thinking, like you were saying, that somehow it's disloyal to give to ourselves. Mm-hmm. But caregivers need to not give themselves away.
No, it's just like driving a car. You can't keep driving that car if the gas tank gets empty. You have to stop and refill the tank. And so care, in order to be an effective caregiver, you have to have care of the caregiver, because then you will not be effective. Mm-hmm. And at some point you might even become resentful and burnt out.
Right. And I just wanted to share a little very, very simple meditation technique that I do. That is something people can, it may or may not be appropriate or help them, but if it helps one or two people that are listening right now, it's so simple. And for me, this is my way of getting quickly refilled, is that I sit very quietly and I close my eyes and make sure my feet are planted firmly on the floor so that I'm not crossing my legs or anything like that. And my body's in a comfortable position. And I imagine a beautiful warm light coming down from above. And this is a meditation technique I'll tell to my clients on the table when I know they've been the massage table, when I know that they've been particularly stressed out. Imagining a beautiful warm light coming down from above, like the sun, mm-hmm. and entering the top of your head and moving down through your body, relaxing your scalp, relaxing your eyes and your forehead, letting your cheeks and your jaw go, and allowing that warm light to drift all the way through your entire body, through your spine, through your legs, and down through your feet into the earth. So you are washed with that beautiful energy, that warming light, and it's really nourishing you and filling you up. And give yourself a few moments to really allow all the muscles to relax. And then imagine energy coming from the earth and up through the feet and nourishing you deep from the earth and grounding you and strengthening you, and bring that energy up through your legs, through your feet, and through the torso, up through the neck, the head, and imagine sending that up into the sky. And then just taking a few deep breaths, feeling connected to heaven and earth, or sky and earth, allowing your shoulders to relax. Then you can open your eyes again, and you'll feel a shift. You'll feel different. And just that simple little exercise in, how can I handle the stress? That simple little exercise can sometimes do wonders to clear the mind and the body so that you can go on. So I wanted to share just a simple something that I do with other people that maybe can help them to just relax even in the middle of the day at their office desk if they need to.
Margaret, I'm so happy that you just did that. Actually, I'm sitting here, I was doing it with you, and just even sitting here in the radio station, I could feel my whole body just relax and shift, and just taking that break gives you the opportunity. You're making space to create something else in your body, and that's something you have control over. We have no control over walking into a movie theater and what's going to happen, but we do have control over where we're going to put our attention and how we're going to help our human out, because we're in charge of that human, and we need to take care of it. And this meditation I've done as well, same meditation as Margaret just gave to you. And this is essential.
You're bringing chi.
That's right.
Bringing chi in.
That's right.
Bringing in the energy,
life force,
the
energy.
life force. The chi, or CHI or QI, depending on how you want to spell it, is the Oriental, because it's not just Chinese and it's not Japanese, and it's a beautiful way of healing. So.
Right, and
I have to
we're
cough.
just,
hold on.
yeah, and so we're able to make beautiful use of the Eastern point of view, which is now becoming more into our society with the yoga and meditation. It's not some esoteric way out there woo-woo thing. It's actually an essential technique to help our human bodies out when they're in pain and suffering, whether it be mental or physical or spiritual, whatever it is for you. Taking time out for yourself and unplugging from the matrix of fear that's all around us, what's ever triggering that fear. Meditation is an essential, or breathing exercises or visualization, yoga. These techniques of quieting and allowing the body to have some rest and peace and chi is probably, since this is the healing hour, one of the most healing pieces of information that we can share with you today.
Right, and the definition of chi is life force. So it's just this idea that there is this life force that animates all things, and that when we connect to it and when it's flowing through us freely, we're in health. And when it's blocked, which is what really every type of body modality is working to unblock frozen chi. It really is what it's doing. In acupuncture, they use the needles, but you can use your thumbs, you can use your hands, your fingers.
Reflexology.
And what we're doing when we do the meditation is we're using our mind. So our mind is like the needles, and it's directing the chi through us so that it flows freely. And so the idea that when you're tense, when you're nervous, when you're stressed, you are blocking the chi. And immediately your body doesn't feel good. It's in that dis-ease. So you want to get the chi flowing again. You want to get the energy flowing again through your body. And you want to restore health to mind, body, spirit. And it's very important that, as Shelley said, that we understand that we have the tools to do this and that we utilize those tools, because over a lifetime, over years, the blocked chi creates disease and affects the organs and our mental well-being. So it really isn't just some, like you said, woo-woo thing. It's essential.
Absolutely. Now I've got to clear my throat too. Excuse me. It is very essential that we do this, and the meditation, when we're doing that and we're giving our bodies that respite, it's important to know that you are taking control, you are directing the energy. You don't have to pop a Xanax. The Xanax is not going to help create the chi. It may calm your nerves, it may take care of that piece of it, but it really doesn't. You're pulling the weed out by the root. To get to the root, you actually need to do the meditation and the breathing and the visualization, because for those of you who are somewhat of control freaks or like to have control over yourself in some ways in a world where we have no control, this is a place where you do.
Right. It's interesting because you're gaining the control through some sort of a level of letting go, right? With the meditation, you let go and you gain control.
That's true. That's true. And so when we're talking about healing horrific and traumatic grief, one of the ways that we can help ourselves out is to be able to learn how to know that even though we don't have control over what happens in the world, we do have some control over what happens in our bodies. And that is something essential that I hope each and every one of you out there who are listening know, that you have that choice. You are not at the mercy of the world.
Right. And so many people get panic attacks.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Have anxiety-related disorders. I've had a number of clients over the years with anxiety-related disorders and panic attacks, and they come in for regular massage. and body work, and I take them through meditations and help them, and I see the progress. It's tremendous to watch the progress. Very early on, 20 years ago or so, my first client. Oh, we have a call coming in. Maybe my first client had just had the death of her son, and I've watched her repair and heal that grief from the death of her son. And it's just been amazing to watch how the combination of the healing she's done for herself and the healing that I've assisted her with has helped. So again, as you say, it's in your power. You can heal the grief that you're going through.
I'd like to also just say that starting in September, I will be offering the mindfulness-based stress reduction program. And that helps, it teaches you how to meditate and do a body scan and go through the body and do a mild form of yoga. And we hold it at Vassar Brothers Medical Center. It's sponsored by HealthQuest. And this is a great 8-week program for those of you to say, well, how do I do this? And where do I go for this? And how do I learn how to do this? This is a wonderful mind-body program that was started by John Kabat-Zinn. And it's a very effective method for people who suffer from anxiety or any anxiety-related illnesses, as well as depression and any kind of life-threatening diseases. And it's just good for everybody, actually, because it deals with fear and depression. And so you can certainly find out more about that by calling me at the center at 471-5269, or go on my website, ShelleyTatelbaum.com, for that information, because some people say, well, how do I do this by myself, and how do I learn how to do this? And yes, I can do Margaret's meditation, and that's great, but what more could I be doing? I really like this, and this is a wonderful program, and I cannot tell you how many people have recovered. I can actually even speak personally, because I did this program 35 years ago for myself, because I had panic disorder, which I don't have anymore, because of learning how to treat myself with these tools that can help me. And so there is help out there, and that mindfulness-based stress reduction program is a wonderful program for that. And in addition to that, getting the body work as well, and getting therapy, these are all ways in which you do not have to suffer. You do not have to be at the mercy of the horror and the trauma that's in this world today.
Can you give the phone number again? Because they might have missed it.
Sure. It's 845-471-5269.
And one more time?
471-5269. Or you can go to ShelleyTatelbaum.com, where the program is actually described in there. And the date is in the middle of September somewhere. It's a Monday evening. It's Monday evenings from 7 to 9 p.m. held at Vassar Brothers Medical Center. And it begins the middle of September and runs until the beginning of November.
Thank you, Shelley. And I just want to add before we end, for anybody that was interested in contacting me or Partners in Massage, that we're located in Hyde Park. We're on Route 9 near the Vanderbilt Mansion. And our phone number is 229-9133. That's 229-9133. And our website is www.partners, Partners, in massage, INMASSAGE.com, partnersinmassage.com. And we've so much enjoyed being with you guys today and talking about ways to deal with grief and stress and panic.
Right. And, we do mention our numbers over and over again, not as a self-promotion. It's really more in terms of making you aware that there are places out there that can help you. And that's really so important. It doesn't really matter whether you see Margaret or I or anybody else. You need to take responsibility for your own health and know that you don't have to suffer.
Exactly. And that you can close your eyes, shut out the world for a few minutes.
That's right.
Take a breath, connect with the chi, with
and the
God,
peace within you.
The peace within you, whatever you call it. And you can find some relief.
Correct.
So remember that the love is all around and it's available to all of us.
And love yourself enough to give yourself that.
Yes. So we thank you for joining us for the Healing Hour.
Thank you so much.
And we will see you again.